All right, welcome everyone. This is the second in the series of podcasts we've organized here at the MPC Alliance, where we talk to industry veterans and major players and get a view into their experiences and opinions and what they see coming up in the future. And today we're very happy to welcome Jakob Pagter, VP at Blockdaemon. Jakob has 20 years of experience in digital security and MPC related areas with a PhD from Aarhus University. He was involved in the famous and seminal Danish sugar beet auction, the MPC use case, and arguably the earliest documented deployment of MPC in production. And he's also a co-founder, including of Partisia blockchain in the kind of Web3 space. So we're very happy to have you, Jakob. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Andrei, and thanks for having me. And yeah, I appreciate the introduction. I was never thought about this. It's been such a long time, but yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we can, as I mentioned, sort of go back into the past and also what we see in the future.
Yeah.
Let's dive in and sort of the first topic, and I think I'll kind of revisit this topic with everyone. And in the first episode, we also kind of had a similar question to this, but it's been more than 17 years, as you very well know, since groups began conducting these kinds of documented deployments of MPC. I'm curious to know if you've noticed if the assumptions in the underlying protocols and definitions that you kind of see out there, both in industry and maybe in academia, how have they kind of evolved over time as they kind of meet real world circumstances? Is there anything that has shifted? Are there gaps, things that you've seen repeatedly sort of missing or that need to be accounted for or compensated for? And would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Um, let's see if I can remember all of it. But I mean, certainly there's been, I mean, there's been a huge, not evolution, I'd say maybe a revolution in performance. I mean, back when we started doing the first protocols we implemented using, passive security would, I don't know, 30 minutes to do a comparison. Of course, that was a bit naive on a number of of parameters, but I mean, still, I mean, it was very, very slow. And when we founded Sepior 10 years ago, it was far more practical, right? It was an order of magnitude faster. And today, it's the same thing has happened over the last 10 years. And you've seen the same with within FHE, which is you can I guess think about as a sub branch, a side branch within MPC. I mean, there's so much research going on, and there's so much just in terms of raw performance, which I think, in my experience, is the major practical bottleneck from getting things working, or has been. It was back then, and today I think one of the main changes has been that protocols today are so efficient that that's not really a conversation. I mean, for some things, yes, but overall, it's not the conversation we're having.
Mhm.
And I think obviously when we did the first protocols back in 568, it was passive protocols. It was limited security and very much adopted to the use case. But I think that's also what we're seeing is that we're seeing protocols with security properties which are adapted to the real world and not just vanilla, passive, and active security. You're seeing, I mean, we're sometimes working together with folks at the university, uh, and they're very interested in learning from us what are the practical limitation and assumptions that we want to work with, right? When we're building software, you sometimes things are just different, right? So I think that's one of the, I think, most interesting developments. It's going for something which was, I mean, the stuff we built with the sugar beet auction was in some sense, an academic exercise trying to see if we could make it work and just hoping that it was, feasible. And today, most problems that people can come up with, there's a way to make it work, right? Sometimes you have to, squeeze it a bit, but you can do a lot of things today that were by, I mean, not even conceivable back then.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to dig into more, perhaps as a historical curiosity, but it's still relevant today, as we've seen with the recent IACR election issue where a key was lost. I don't know if you heard that announcement, but um, how did you at the time deal with the latency? Did you have to explain it to users, or were your users already kind of having with enough expertise to manage it themselves? I'm just curious how that kind of played out
Mm,
originally.
Yeah, so the sugar beet auction was so that was a three-party computation, and it was done on a local area network. So literally we were sitting in the same room. So the setup was that the research project doing it was holding one of the key shares. Um, the one side of that auction was holding the other, and the other side was holding the third. And we would literally have each of our a simple USB stick, and it would be on the laptops would be connected on a local area network. So it's a very simple setup. Uh, Probably not fit for proper security production system today. Um, but that, even then it took minutes, but we were in the same room with those guys and we could,
Mhm.
explain to them it's supposed to take this long. Let's have a cup of coffee.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's definitely my own experience as well. It's helpful to. So I remember in the project um, we had a helpline live, so people could stay on the phone with us while they were doing it.
yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely um, at least at that period, back then, that's how you had to do it. And it sounds like you feel like today it's greatly improved, at least for the right use cases.
It is, I think, one of the areas where we see that type of performance issue is when using mobile devices.
Hmm.
Uh, Typically, if you're doing key management for wallets, MPC wallets, and you want to run the MPC nodes on mobile devices, that can typically be, I think, one of the remaining areas where you run into problems. One of them being that it can be a challenge to implement a solution where the user does not have to keep the app open. It can be a challenge to get, we have clients who are doing with mobile MPC nodes in areas where there's poor network connectivity, and they're
Mm.
kind of expecting the same type of performance as they do in other types of applications. But all of a sudden, the network latency and whatnot exaggerates the negative aspects of the MPC protocols. So in those cases, I think there's still some problems to be solved.
Mm. And yeah, I kind of wanted to dive into kind of what is how does this play out in the standard kind of product ideation, design, and then sort of engineering life cycle at Blockdaemon, if you can comment on that? Because I'm curious whether the UI UX issues associated with this, do they come in very early in the process? Is the product manager kind of aware of them? Does it only come up later during the engineering stages? And this could be anything, including the latency, or it could be, yes, key management, things like that. I'm just curious how you approach it.
Yeah, to be honest, it's a bit it varies a bit, right? I think the the folks doing product management, they are aware that can't just do anything using MPC, and they appreciate the security
Mm.
properties and whatnot. Um, but sometimes the problems you run into are just not expected, right? As I mentioned before, we had one client where, when we're doing benchmarks on mobile devices in Aarhus in Denmark, things are working just fine. But when you move them to an area where you only have like edge connectivity or something like that, then all of a sudden it's a problem, right? And even the best product manager, even or the best engineer knowing about the network, unless they, think in that direction, they're not going to be aware of it. So some of these things you just find out along the way. But I think overall, we try to understand it and we try to think through it, uh, and we try to use, I mean, the what I would call the MPC toolbox. There are a lot of different things you can do. You can use asynchronous communication. You can use for signing. You can do pre-signatures. You can do lots of different tricks. Each comes with their own trade-offs. But I mean, once you have a conversation with the product side of it, typically you can go back and forth a bit and find something that fits everybody. I mean, that's what we did. I mean, 20 years ago, and that's what we're doing today.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. This is a topic I often think about and talk about. And it's interesting to hear the perspective that even after 20 years, it sounds like it's still very much custom work to build a particular product or solution using MPC. I'm sure it's improved, and there's been a lot of work on compilers and kind of those kinds of tool kits for building something maybe more general purpose. My own opinion has been that it does take decades, and we're still possibly decades away from having the kind of tooling where a non-cryptographer or non-MPC expert could write the algorithm they want and have it be compiled into something that can be deployed. What's your opinion on that? Do you think it's going to be sooner? Do you think it is going to take another 20 years?
I, I think it's maybe it's the wrong question. I think if you look at other areas in security, I don't think it's the case today that if you have somebody in a bank who wants to write an application using an HSM, they just give it to a random engineer and ask him to do the integration. I mean, HSMs have been around for a long time, and it's still complicated to do that, right? And it's still subtle, and there's a lot of details that you need to be aware of, even if it's, you get a completely standard IBM box or something like that. It's not trivial to use it right. So I think expecting MPC, which is another security technology, to be completely different and easier to use, I don't think that's the right approach to discussing that. I think it's more interesting to try to understand what type of problems can be solved with the technology and helping people understand that, and then also have the NPC experts, quote unquote, if you will, being able to understand the business problems. Because I think often that, and I think that's, I mean, maybe one day we can have like a completely transparent NPC computation layer, but I don't think I think it's going to take more than 20 years before we get there because there's so many different things you can do, and there's so many different problems. And even if you had like the general purpose tool to solve it, I think key management is a very nice example in some ways because we barely use general purpose MPC, right? It's all special purpose ECDSA, SNOR signatures, blah blah blah. And only for certain things we can use general purpose MPC. And for some cases that's a bit slow, but even then you can tweak it, right? So I think yeah, I don't think it's the way we prefer to think about it because I think that's even if we did that in 20 years, we would want to do something different because there would be some, fancy new way of doing MPC or FHE or whatever
Mm.
available that is not, so easy to access still.
Yeah, and I think your answer to the question, maybe the question itself that I posed, actually is a great example of maybe the difference in perspective between we have kind of two categories at the MPC Alliance of companies. Not everyone fits into both or either, but roughly speaking, we think of the companies as either falling into the security or the privacy, kind of category, where companies that focus on security typically do something like key management or signatures, wallets, things like that. And the companies that focus on privacy are companies that try to solve some kind of data science or data analysis or collaboration, collaborative data workflow problem. I've personally been in companies in both categories myself in this alliance throughout my career. But I think the point that you're making is actually really important because um, that perspective that you articulated comes sort of almost as a default if you're working in security, because you acknowledge that security is difficult and that you need to actually design security into the actual product and solution that you're working on. Um, it's much easier to make the mistake that you pointed out in your answer when you're in the privacy side, because people are used to having data analytics products and things like that, where you just get your data scientist, they put together their R code or their Jupyter notebook, and they have all the data available to them, and they have all the time in the world to experiment with it, find ways to massage it, and get the outcome, in terms of the analysis that they want. And maybe it is naive to think that that kind of process can ever become secure because, as we know, the challenge there is even at the very end, when the data comes out, you see something, right? And that leaks information about the inputs of some kind, and that kind of analysis is very difficult. So I wonder if the difference that you kind of articulated maybe can be characterized as, which of these two categories you fall into when you're working on a use case.
In some sense, I agree. I will say that we work with clients that are knowledgeable about security and are knowledgeable about how to build a wallet and what are security properties and what need, but still they would rather not necessarily understand all the details of how to set up the MPC protocols to work in the most efficient way for their use case, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think even there, I mean, it would be beneficial, but I think so. I guess the learning I'm trying to pull from that, but also from some of the work I see in Partisia is, um, at least where I see things today, it's really hard to make a one size fits all approach. It might be in the future that it will be easier. I mean, certainly AI tools and that type of thing can maybe help bridge the gap. Um, but uh, yeah, I guess I just have a hard time imagining exactly how that reality would look like. Because in my head, there's so many moving parts, and also I think one of I guess um, I mean my conservativeness is maybe also because I think from our experiences with problem solving, I mean solving problems using MPC, is it really hard to I mean, it's really a dialogue between the engineers and the product folks or the people with the use case to understand, okay, how do these things fit together, right? And how can we make the right solution here in a way that gets the best performance while without sacrificing security or whatever it is you want to optimize for. And I think, I mean, I just don't want to sound naive in saying, yeah, in 20 years we'll have this solved. I hope so, but I think there's a lot of complexity to manage.
Mm-hmm. Do you think something like standardization could help with that? Because I wonder, one of the challenges we all face when we try to go to market with MPC solutions is that the familiarity and the literacy of our customer or our prospective
Yeah.
customer, right, is very limited. Do you feel like standardization, where the customer can actually go to some kind of, and this is, of course, something we've tried to work on a little bit at the MPC Alliance, where we tried to do a standard around private set intersection that, some of us work together to kind of articulate in a document how you might standardize the security requirements for a private set intersection workflow, for example. Do you feel like that would help, or do you feel like that wouldn't be enough for the kinds of customers that you work with?
Um, I mean, it will help them if they fit into the box we create, right? So
Hmm.
I think standardization is important. I think it's something we should work on, but maybe not for those reasons. Um, I think for some, I mean, for a sufficiently well understood domain, yeah, would definitely agree. And also, I mean, as you mentioned, specific use cases which are widely applicable, like private sentence section, also some of the key management stuff that we're doing. I'm pretty sure that it would be, oh, I'm convinced that there's value in standardization.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. At least, yeah. In my opinion, I think anything that can help with sort of communicating to a prospective customer who's not familiar with the technology, what the possibilities are, and that's kind of,
Yeah.
one of the ways to do that.
Yeah, and I think from in my experience in terms of standardization, what I see is that when we're doing MPC, it's another paradigm in terms of how we do security. So that impacts us. So what I think is important also for an organization like the MPC Alliance is to work on having not necessarily MPC specific standards, but MPC friendly standards.
Hmm.
I know that, for instance, Coinbase, they have a variant of BIP44, which is more MPC friendly, something like that, which would allow compatibility across different wallets. I think would be valuable to have standardized. It could also be used outside of MPC, but it would be MPC friendly. The same with the NIST 140, where it can be hard to have cryptographic modules certified because uh, unclarity about what the cryptographic boundary is. Stuff like that, I think it would be helpful to progress MPC in certain areas.
Hmm.
For sure. And also, I mean, standard. I mean, what we're getting a lot from clients in general is that can you make a reference implementation of this or that so that we can see how to do it best, right? And I
Hmm.
think what you said about private citizen section is really that in a sense, right? It's how do we solve that problem?
Hmm.
And I
Yeah,
think
and yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, no, I mean, I think that's kind of a bottom-up approach to solving for how can we make a general purpose way of doing MPC is that let's just add one block to the toolbox at a time.
Hmm. Yeah, and I kind of wanted to use this as a segue to maybe get your view on trusted execution environments and kind of other hardware solutions and how you feel they interact with MPC as a solution. And one one thing you mentioned, which kind of naturally leads to this thought, is when you create standards that are more kind of result oriented, right, in terms of what is the objective that you're trying to achieve and not necessarily what technology you want to use. At least today, when customers or prospective customers look at that, they may have seen from other vendors or something they read about or something they were pitched. Trusted execution environments, which can at least purport to achieve the same objectives as MPC in some cases. But I'm curious what your perspective and opinion is on that. Do you feel like it's a complementary technology? Do you feel like it could achieve the same objectives? Obviously under different assumptions. Just curious what kind of your thoughts are, and have you run into that when you're working with customers?
I mean, that's something we run into a lot. I think for me, from a business perspective, it's a complementary technology. And also maybe from an academic perspective, it's something which I think it has its own flaws in terms of side channel attacks and whatnot. But it also has other types of advantages. I mean, FIPS validation being one from a business perspective, others being performance and whatnot. But I think the interesting thing, I mean, in practice, I mean, when we talk to our clients, it's a lot about what is the specific security model they have. I mean, what kind of assumptions are they comfortable with? Um, and then it's a question of um, sorry, I lost track of myself. Um, yeah, it's a question of from a security point of view, once you have those assumptions. The other way it comes into play typically is that it's also a natural way to do hardening, defense in depth. Uh, where for I mean for many of our clients today, it's really ta it's table stakes, right? You need to have confidential compute one way or the other because they expect it.
Mhm.
And so that's just, I mean, it's kind of what is expected from a secure wallet solution in many cases, as MPC is also becoming. And I think it MPC and confidential computing can play nicely together. It has kind of, I think, I mean, if you take kind of very academic perspective, you can say you can run passive protocols inside enclaves, and then you can mitigate the side channel attacks using the distributed security model, but you can leverage the enhanced performance of passive protocols, right? It's something that's very kind of naive approach to that. And then you can build from there, right? How can you help have a practical security model where you combine these things?
Yeah, and
And
it's
that's
very
what we
encouraging.
actually, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, It's very encouraging to hear someone say, we have customers asking for these things or almost expecting them. For a lot of us sort of in the space who are maybe earlier in the sort of lifespan of a company or a startup focusing on privacy enhancing technology, sometimes it can be difficult to find the customers who will ask for sort of the right properties that these technologies solve. But yeah, it's encouraging to hear. It sounds like you have customers that are familiar with these things and they come and they actually demand or require. Do you think that's more because of just these are experienced customers and they just have the expertise to know this is necessary? Do you feel like they're influenced by marketing or standards? Yeah, could you comment on that a little bit?
Um, can you repeat that?
Yeah, sorry. My questions are a little bit long sometimes. Do you find that the customers who come and ask for example, hardware security in the stack, do they do this because their own security teams are familiar with this and they ask for it? Is it because they've seen the marketing from other companies and they think it's important, or maybe it's even regulatory?
I think it's a mix of different reasons. Some of them are big institutional clients that just, you know, all the hardening they can get is kind of mandatory. For others, it's maybe something they heard about and they're asking, can we have that too? I think one thing that has happened over the last years is that something like AWS Nitro Enclaves has made, in my head at least, made the accessibility of confidential computing much more like a commodity. So today it's much more accessible for everybody. So it's like for certain clients they're like, I mean, why don't we run it inside an enclave? And then you can start, talking about attestation and all of the practical problems associated with that. But I think it's becoming more and more something that people expect and that everybody's aware of. I mean, for some, it's a regulatory requirement, internal or external. And for others, it's just something they think is nice to have because they can use it in their marketing.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting to kind of hear from someone again who kind of interacts with informed customers and again we all hope to have that problem across the alliance.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of at this point maybe I'd ask sort of kind of a concluding for your concluding thoughts and maybe the prompt I'll kind of share in this case is what do you feel most excited about in the immediate future in this space? Is there anything, surprising or interesting or anything that you're looking forward to as we all continue to work on MPC?
I Yeah, it's a it's a good and very broad question. I think what I mean as a person, what excites me the most is that uh, today, and that's certainly different than from 20 years ago. Privacy is becoming the norm, right? It's something everybody expects. It's not necessarily something everybody gets, but it's something everybody expects. And I think for me, that is always part of the conversation in the GDPR in American regulation or whatever. I think, and also from a commercial perspective, I think that makes me very pleased about the way we're moving from a technological perspective, because that's kind of always been the underlying mission of what we're doing. And I think that combined with the fact that there's so much going on in MPC, FHE, zero knowledge, all of those technologies that can actually make us implement a lot of business functionality, societal functionality in a way that respects privacy. So that we don't have to, because we want to have privacy, and because it's becoming norm, it doesn't mean that we need to forego of certain solutions, right? And I think for me that being in a technical environment and a society where that is happening, I'd say that's I think is the most important thing, and what makes me most excited about the future.
Yeah, I definitely share that excitement, and I have definitely seen, especially over the last 5 years, awareness and interest in pursuing
Yeah.
solutions that have these kinds of properties. Yeah,
Yeah, and we
there's
can make them, right?
yeah,
We
exactly,
can actually
yeah,
make the solutions, MPC Alliance, but a range of other privacy technologies. I think that's very exciting. I think ranging from small startups to the biggest companies in the world that are using these technologies to actually solve real problems. I think that excites me.
yeah. Well, I, as we all are here at the MPC Alliance. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think this was a very interesting conversation. Lots of good insights that at least I found very valuable and will think about even after the conversation. So thank you very much, Jakob, for joining and making this series. A continuing success. And we appreciate your time.
Not at all.
Good luck to all of us at the MPC Alliance.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I really like the work the Alliance is doing. So yeah, I appreciate being invited here.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.